Right. Thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A. My name is Andrea Sporsic Klund, and I'm the Film Commissioner for Missouri. I also have the great honor of hosting the New Filmmakers Forum, which this film, We Burn Like This, is a part of. And we're so happy to have Alana Waxman with us today to talk about the film a little bit. You're joining us from Los Angeles.
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me.
Happy. Yes. Thanks for sharing the film with us. First, because I am with a film commission, I have to say how beautiful Montana looks in the film. So nicely done. What is your
Yeah.
connection to Montana?
Yeah, and our Montana Film Commissioner actually was a huge support of
Awesome.
for this film, and yeah, the Montana Film Office gives filmmakers grants actually to make their films. So yeah, we've been working very closely with our film commissioner. So it's nice to meet another film
Wonderful.
commissioner. Um, yeah, it's a little bit random why I ended up setting in Montana. I actually grew up in Iowa, not too far from St. Louis, and
Oh,
I have a lot of cousins who live in St. Louis, and I grew up actually traveling it was only about a 4-hour drive. I used to come to St. Louis and still do a lot growing
okay.
up. So St. Louis is
Awesome.
holds a special place in my heart for sure. And a lot
Oh,
of people I love live there. So thank you for having me at this festival. And it's great to tune in even from Los Angeles just to connect with you all. And it's an honor to be included in this New Filmmakers Forum as well, and to be highlighted as this is my director or my debut feature.
excellent.
Um, and yeah, so as I said, I grew up in Iowa. I actually had a cousin growing up who lived in Montana, and I think that must have been something that got planted in my brain because I used to write to her as we got connected at a family reunion at some point when we were maybe around 9, and someone said, "You should write, you guys should be pen pals." And so then we were. And but yeah, I this film has been a very long process. I actually originally wrote it as a short story when I was in undergrad, which was in 2008, and then I made it into a short film when I was in grad school in 2012, and then I decided this would be my first feature. And the short story I wrote, I had set in Montana, and the short film I had set in Montana, even though it was filmed in Los Angeles. And uh, I think it was just my own ideas of what Montana was, and perhaps people who haven't been there. I think perhaps many people have a certain idea of what Montana is, that it's actually a tagline for the state, is the last best place. And it's kind of got this romanticized view that it's not a lot of people, and it's just these epic mountains and like untouched land. And a lot of that is true. And I also learned uh, how it's more complicated than that as well, like most things. And so I think I wanted a place where the character would feel isolated, and she would be in a kind of a small town, and um, kind of like my small town that I grew up in too, that it kind of feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. And so I kind of wrote it as Montana as a similar but different place. And little did I know that that would kind of change the course of my life for many years to come, because I
Wow.
kind of picked Montana. Yeah, so then when I was writing the feature, I realized, you know what, I haven't even been to Montana, and how can I possibly write a feature? Uh, and so I visited Montana, and realized it was a very different kind of place. There was just a lot to understand about it, and I had just graduated from USC grad school, and I was trying to figure out how to support myself and make my first feature and write it. And so I just decided to move to Montana. So I actually lived in Montana for 6 years while making this film, though I thought it would take me closer to about a year when I moved out there. But I ended up kind of spending a lot of time there, and becoming more connected to the film community there and the art community. And um, yeah, it just became kind of very intertwined with my life.
Awesome. You hear that said a lot about the place becomes a character, and I do believe that is true in your film. So,
Yeah,
well, that's very nice. I mean, it's
yeah.
a very personal story, into your life. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. And I should say too that when I first started writing it, it was different. And the script was originally called Cheyenne is Burning, and the lead character was an indigenous young woman, a Northern Cheyenne girl. And so that was kind of a part of the whole setting of Montana as well. And so I also moved to Montana to better understand what was going on in the Native community there, so I could write about what I wanted to write about. I didn't know that this is what I was writing about, but I wanted to write about historical trauma and this girl who feels lost, basically, and trying to find a sense of place and sense of uh, and healing too, and that she's dealing with a lot of pain that she doesn't understand. And uh, a few years into that process, I basically, very long story short, decided that I needed to make it more personal, and that in a way I had come to understand myself in a different way through spending a lot of time around the Native community and the friends I had made there. And I came to understand myself as that my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and I never actually met them because they passed away before I was young. And I had never really thought too heavily about that before because it was never something I had really interfaced with in my life. Perhaps if I had met them, I would have been thinking about it a little more. So I started to understand myself more as a descendant of survivors and a descendant of historical trauma. And uh, it seemed, I became more aware that perhaps I should take a step back and not tell a story about a Native person as a non-Native person, and that I should just reflect more from my own perspective and tell the story from my perspective. So I adapted my film. I kind of started over in a way, but it was an adaptation of the film. There's a lot of even very similar scenes and characters, and definitely similar themes, but talking about Jewish historical trauma instead of Indigenous historical trauma. And so, yeah, it became about an exploration of Jewish identity and a Jewish girl searching for a sense of belonging in a rural part of the US, which is where I grew up too, and where there aren't, unlike St. Louis, there aren't a lot of Jewish people around. And that is my experience and my upbringing. And I've actually never really seen that depicted in a film. That usually when you see Jewish characters, you see them in a place like New York City, or a place where it's kind of about that and about the Jewish community all together. And that's not my personal experience. And so I was excited to kind of share more how it feels to be Jewish in a place where you're isolated, um, in that way, and how the different kinds of misunderstandings and judgments and hatreds that perhaps more easily are found in places where there isn't a large representation of that identity. And around that time too it was 2016, and it was the morning after the election uh, in 2016, there were suddenly these neo-Nazi flyers on the doorstep of the synagogue in Missoula, Montana, where I had been living at the time. So that kind of all was happening around the time I was really reflecting a little more and on my own identity, and feeling anti-Semitism or a threat of anti-Semitism in a way that I've never felt before. And felt in my life. And it always, I kind of like Ray. She says, you know, I thought this kind of thing didn't happen anymore. I think that's how I felt. And then it's like, oh, actually, this perspective hasn't gone anywhere. It's just hasn't been openly expressed. And now we're in, uh, our country is in a place where people feel comfortable to express how they actually feel, and it feels okay to. And therefore, we get to have a look at um, how people really feel, and that these prejudices and hatreds haven't actually gone anywhere. And I think it's important to know that, for all of us to know that, and for, I don't know, to just be able to talk about it. So I guess for better and for worse, that this film became more and more relevant in a way to, I felt more inspired to be a visible Jewish filmmaker telling in this Jewish story in this time, in order to get to have these conversations and bring more awareness to people who may or may not be aware of what's happening, or people who may or may not hold certain ideas of who Jewish people are, or just have more of an experience of how it feels, at least for this girl, and for you to relate however you might relate.
Awesome. Love that. One of my favorite parts. I know some people watch the Q&A before they watch the movie, and
Okay.
sometimes they watch it after, but I'm going to tell you the idea of coming from survivor blood, and that finding strength in that, I think is such a strong statement. And I just love that that's where it goes, where the story goes. So so beautiful. And your actresses, I want to talk about how you
Yeah.
chose your lead roles, who all did such a remarkable job and really went to emotional levels. Can you talk about how you cast them?
Yeah. Yeah. We were, I mean, yes, I think I feel really grateful, and I feel all the actors are just wonderful in this film, and it relies on them to kind of be that, especially for Madeline Coughlin, who plays Ray, you know, in a way that the film, I knew that the film would only ever be as good as she is, in a way, you know, because she's in nearly every frame, and we're just so present with her. And uh, of course, you know, with such a crucial uh, thing like that as casting the lead character, of course, it ended up happening down to the wire, last minute. And we were just searching for a lead character or lead actor to play this role. And we, in kind of a frenzy, we ended up, you know, just blasting everyone we know. And because we, you know, we're an indie budget, and we debated bringing on a casting director, and then decided that basically I, along with our producers, would do the casting ourselves.
Oh, that's
And
tough.
yeah, so we did have a lot of local casting calls in both Missoula and in Billings, where we primarily shot the film. And so a lot of the smaller roles you see are all Montana actors, uh, and some people who live in Montana, who maybe are from Montana or from nearby, and they went and left for a period of time, went to Los Angeles or New York, and then had moved back to Montana. And there's actually a really strong theater program at the University of Montana in Missoula, and a number of people who happen to also be some of my friends went through that program, and they are really good actors. So we cast a lot of the roles through people I knew already, and then open casting calls. And then for Madeline, it was ended up being a friend of a friend who sent it to her, and she's born and raised in Los Angeles. And we had a call, and turns out that, you know, she's Jewish as well, and her grandparents fled from Eastern Europe during the war. And so we had that kind of shared history. And she just understood the character in almost a spooky kind of way. And she, it just was obvious that she just thoroughly understood who this person was, in some ways, even more so perhaps than me at times. And she just went there. She had never been to Montana. We flew her out. She was with us for about a month. And she talks about how, that helped her in a way to be away from home and to not be returning to something familiar, kind of was an interesting process for her to just kind of stay in this different kind of place, and this different kind of embodying this different kind of person, and really just going deep into it. And Devery Jacobs, who plays Chrissy B, her best friend, Devery is actually someone I saw in an indie feature called Rhymes for Young Ghouls back in 2015.
Awesome.
And back when the lead character was Indigenous, I really wanted Devery to play the lead role. And I was able to get in touch with her and bring her on the project. So Devery's actually been involved with this project since about 2016. And we even did test shoots with her. We were really moving forward. And then I started eventually taking some steps back and just kind of really trying to take a hard look at what I was doing with this film. And eventually, as I said, I changed it and, wrote to Devery this long email expressing that, this is what I've been going through. This is why I changed it. This is the things I've been thinking about. And I'm so sorry. You're no longer can play the lead. But it has nothing to do with your abilities, obviously. And I asked her if she would still be interested in playing the best friend. And so Devery understood and supported what my process had been, and thought whatever she thought, but she thought she still wanted to be involved, which I was really grateful for. And Devery's just been, I'm so excited that she's been having a lot of success lately. She's on this new show, Reservation Dogs, on Hulu, on FX on Hulu. And she just got nominated for a Gotham Award the other day.
Awesome.
For her performance. And yeah, it's exciting to see her start to get recognized, which I thought personally was going to happen much sooner, because I thought she was so great in this Rhymes for Young Ghouls movie. So so Devery and Madeline are really the only two actors who we traveled in to Montana, and the other actors were all somewhere in Montana.
Awesome. I thought the mom was quite good too, and the chemistry between the two of them was very.
Oh yeah.
And the art therapy. Are you an artist as well beyond the filmmaking? The art therapy working into the script where did that?
Yeah. I mean, I actually in the last couple of years, I started painting cats.
Wow.
But
I love it.
I think that was I don't know. Oh yeah, that's how it happened. I ended up taking a painting class, like a pet painting, paint your pet class.
Awesome.
And then I just really enjoyed it and kept kind of going, and actually used my cat paintings as a way to raise money for the film at one point.
Awesome.
Commissioned, I'll paint your cat. But besides that, no, I'm not really a serious painter, artist. I think that idea was in the script really early on. I think, this character is, as I said, inspired by parts of my life, but it's also inspired by parts of people I know, other people's lives. And that the painting part actually comes from, inspired by a friend of mine who's a really wonderful painter.
Awesome. Did she do the paintings for the film?
She didn't. No.
Okay.
Actually, our production designer, Lauren Norby,
neat.
He, when we were talking about the paintings, and who was going to do them, I said, should we bring on someone to make these paintings? And he said, well, actually, I'd kind of like to try it. So
Oh,
he painted both art shows for
oh
both
gosh.
Ray and her mother, Maggie. And yeah, just kind of pulled off
Very
his
cool.
own many art shows and we had to kind of work together to figure out, how does Ray paint, how does her mother paint, and what are the two styles. And
Neat.
you know, the paintings go by a little bit fast, but if you look, that there's definitely two distinct types of painting going on in there. So
Very cool.
we were lucky
Awesome.
to just have a talented production designer. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. You can learn more about this film and all 5 of our New Filmmakers Forum films at our panel discussion on Saturday, November 20th. I hope you'll join us back and learn more about the process. And if you haven't seen the film, hope you'll watch it and tune in and learn more. Thank you again for being with us, and I look forward to further discussion here in a little while.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.